Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dolphin.
Hey, I just wanted to take a second to encourage all of the listeners out there to head over to our websites and make sure that you're on our email newsletter lists. If you're not on the email list for dolphinhorsemanship.com and thebitcourse.com, just go to either of those websites. There'll be a pop-up within a few seconds that'll prompt you to join the newsletter. Put in your name and email. We won't pester you with irrelevant stuff. We're not going to sell your address or any of that stuff. It's safe. It's just for communication. I've had a couple friends that lost access to their Facebook page and that kind of thing, and 30,000 people they were communicating with all of a sudden are gone. So we want to make sure we've got you, and there isn't possibility of just losing the entire audience. So we're going to have some exclusive offers and put out the most current information, as well as some bonus things like the walking challenge that we've got going on in December for you to win a chance to get a free virtual coaching session with me. We'll be doing one of those each month, and that'll just be through the newsletter. This episode is the audio recording from a live Q&A that we did this past week, and I just wanted to give y'all a taste of how those live Q&As are going to go. We're going to start doing more of those, give y'all some input on podcast guests. Y'all ask me questions, I get a question or two, and again, it's a nice open format where you can bring whatever problems you might have, and I'll take my best shot at it. So this is what that goes like.
A 6-minute timer.
Okay. Well, I see a few more that are trickling in, but I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Just to let y'all know, I don't have like a presentation or any agenda lined up for this or anything. I meant it more to be a Q&A kind of a thing. We've been getting a lot of kind of questions about the podcast and that sort of stuff, and then there's always lots of bits and horse training questions, and so that was kind of my intention, was y'all can have a free-for-all. I guess maybe if we use the chat, that'll be the simplest way to keep it organized, where we don't have people talking on top of each other. If y'all haven't done a lot of Zoom stuff, there is a little bit of a lag, so you will very frequently think the person before you is done talking, and then you wind up talking on each other and nobody can understand anything. So if y'all want to bring up the chat and put your name and question, then I'll kind of, or just raise a hand or whatever, I'll call on you. Not everybody has a name on their deal though. So what y'all got? Any particular topics that we want to address or anything? Am I showing a lack of leadership? Were y'all expecting more of an agenda and a presentation here? Okay, Christy Meagley. Yeah, you can change your name by clicking on the 3 dots. So I've got a couple of these that are like phone number. Like Rich, for whatever reason, yours is coming across iPhone 343. I've already identified that from you talking. But
am I even on there?
What?
I didn't see you highlighted, so that we may have more people than what are fitting on my screen now. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay. Who was that? Is that Alyssa? All right.
It is, yes. So I've listened to most of your podcast, and I came up with this one the other day listening to it. Are you aggregating the data from the icebreaker questions to create a Jordan Peterson style know thyself equestrian personality test?
Not officially. I kind of have a loose deal. And like, to be honest, there are a few questions that I throw in there to put people off balance, like have you ever had a UFO encounter? And in the first 15 or 20 episodes, like half the people said yes. And I did not expect that at all. That was kind of a whoa. Okay, even if they had, I wouldn't have thought we'd gone here in public out loud on the record, And so like that's one of the questions I'm thinking about dropping because nobody has in like the last 20 guests. I don't know what that's about. But so there are certain ones like Bay Horse Mafia, obviously, that has shown a very clear and distinct pattern throughout. I am trying to change those up a little bit. So I have done a couple of Facebook posts where I'm offering up, if any of y'all tonight have a new question you'd like to pose or something like that, I'm happy to throw it into the mix. Or if you have some you're sick of hearing. I got rid of the two twins. One of them's not planned deal because I figured I'd told the same dad joke too many times in a row for it to be funny anymore. But now I'm trying to have a position for a dad joke, a little something like that. It really does seem to break the ice, build a little rapport with the guests. It's been more revealing about their true personality to me than I ever would have thought that it was. That was a happy accident. So it really gives me a lot of later questions to ask. But no, I have not officially compiled any data for any sort of critical research on horse people personalities to answer your direct question there.
I do think you need to branch back out into that. That could be your next big online class thing.
Well, I mean, all I would have to do is go back and listen to them and record it. So it's still if any of y'all have like a master's student that needs a thesis, we can hook them up. But, so anyway, sometimes those take a long time too. I know I've had some people that comment like, he didn't talk about horses at all for the first hour or something. Yeah. There's a fast forward button on there. You can listen to it at 1.5 or 2 times speed. All that kind of stuff. If you don't like what's on there, it's easy to get to something else. So, but I like it. I think it's helped build rapport. Because some of the guests I know, some of them I've never met. We had a 5-minute phone call and then we did the podcast.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get into a deep conversation or for them to trust you and really answer the questions when they don't know you and how you're going to treat them. So I think those questions do a lot to help that out.
Set timer for 2 minutes.
I always thought you should do either a UFO or a ghost encounter.
A ghost encounter is a good one.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I like that. I have been meaning to go through them and trim some. So I need to refresh them a little bit. But anyway, any other podcast lightning round questions before we move on to something else? Any suggestions for a new question? Is there a question y'all hate and want me to just axe that one? Stop asking about crunchy or smooth peanut butter. That's stupid.
There's some stuff in the chat boxes. Some people have some stuff in the chat.
Okay, I see one. Yes, ma'am. Talk about the maturity of a horse's mouth growth and how it relates to the bit. We can go on that for a while. Okay, so here's basically kind of the general chronological map of how the teeth go in the horse's mouth. A lot of foals will be born with no teeth. Some of them may have their teeth by the time they're about 6 months or so. So typically when we're weaning them, all of their incisors, the baby teeth version of them anyway, would be in, and then they would have their first 3 premolars, and their wolf teeth by the time they're about 6 or 8 months as well. And then their real molars will start to come in 1 per year. So about the time they're 4 or 5, typically they will have all 6 cheek teeth, bottom and top. Now that's, horses don't grow by calendars, so that can vary. Like the last episode where we had Gretchen, who's the equine dentist, she said there were some horses that she's seen where their back top cheek teeth aren't fully in until they're like 8, where they're in actual contact with the lower molar and everything. So when we're 2-year-old, 3-year-old, we should have wolf teeth, 4 premolars or 3 premolars. Technically the wolf tooth is also a premolar, but I think that's a silly way to categorize it. And then we got 1 or 2 back molars, permanent ones in. And then 2.5, they're going to be shedding their center, top and bottom incisors. So that's what we're going to generally start with. One of the things that I talk about that's a little controversial is that wolf teeth really shouldn't be that big of a deal. I think we make a really, really big deal about wolf teeth in colts. I've started lots of colts that still had wolf teeth. It's really common if we have like a little stallion that comes in training and we decide to castrate him, that a month or two in, when we can get the surgery scheduled, that they'll remove them at that point when he's knocked out anyway. If you have the bit adjusted properly, and assuming we're talking a normal size 14, 15 hand horse, where the bit is sitting is this far from the wolf teeth. Like you have to really stretch lip way back there before the bit could contact teeth. So people that are telling you that, I broke a wolf tooth off because I was riding them and I'll never do that again, they were pulling ungodly hard on that bridle rein. You should not be in that territory. All right. I mean, could you get there? Yeah. Should you get there? No. Some bad things were going on in that instance. I do still recommend that wolf teeth get removed.
Because I don't know what's what.
They're Rich, would you mind muting? Or I'm going to go ahead and mute you there. Okay. So I do recommend that we always remove wolf teeth. Technically, they are deciduous too. So if y'all have had any young colts that you had dental work done on, it's really common that you're not going to find all 4 wolf teeth. Really common. In fact, I can't remember the last horse that did have all 4. So they will drop some on their own. The bad part of that is that sometimes they're recessed, and when the root dissolves, they migrate. So like in the bit video and the bit course and all that, I actually have a horse, Lusitano gelding, that has a wolf tooth that moved up his skull and fused right below his eye and his cheek. And you can see the bump clearly under his skin and feel it and everything. They can migrate all the way up to what they're called ear teeth, where you'll think you have an abscess in the ear or something, and then the vet will go working with it and remove teeth out of there. That'll be a little freaky at times, and that's not common, but that can happen. When they get to be 3.5, they're going to shed the next outer set of incisors, and they're also generally going to lose the caps on the first premolars. So that baby tooth that was in there, it's going to pop off. It's usually about that thick, and that can be a problematic time. Just like with kids when they're teething and things like that, they can have some mouth pain. They may get a little mouthier. If it's in that time range, I can play around in their mouth and kind of see what's going on. And like I talk a lot about the foamy mouth and expressing their discomfort or emotional unwellness through the bit. If they're shedding caps at that moment, I don't have a dentist around that can pull them or whatever. I have the reason sorted it out, so I can kind of disregard some of that information because I know what the cause of it is. You'll also see pretty characteristically when they're in that 3-year-old range, that's when their jaw's going to expand a little more to accommodate more of those permanent teeth coming in. So it'll be very common, a 2-year-old, the underside of his jaw will be flat. And when they get to be a 3-year-old, you'll get a bump in there. And then that'll level out and it'll kind of be flat again when they're in that 4, 5, 6-year-old range. So this goes, I think, a lot into the vaquero world, where they would use a Bozal, a Hackmore to ride the young horses. They didn't have the same kind of dental knowledge or instrument, no sedation, no speculums. You think about all the things they didn't have, but they knew all these changes are going on in the mouth. I mean, between 2 and 5, there's kind of a constant shedding of teeth, new things coming in and erupting. So things are changing all the time. So they can have a lot of issues with their mouth. And so they just stayed out of the mouth until that was done. By the time they're 5 or 6, you put a bit in there and then you roll, and kind of all that stuff is taken care of itself. So, Linda, that's a good question. Did I adequately answer it, or is there any more to that you would like expounded upon? Because I could take some tangents there.
Yeah, you did. And when you said about the changes in the bottom jaw as they grow, I think that's more what I was thinking about.
Mhm.
So
So
you answered that.
yeah, you can spot a 3-year-old just about easier than any other age of horse because they'll have kind of that divot in there, or not divot, but they'll get that angle to their jaw rather than it being flat. Pretty much in usually the spring of their 3-year-old year is when all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, we're there now, So,
And
but like I say, they don't have calendars, so it does vary with certain horses.
so it is possible that that causes them some discomfort, and like you said, the vaqueros use the hackamore and kind of avoid that.
That's my belief. I mean, there wasn't really a lot of written record about that kind of stuff. My personal feelings on that is that within the vaquero community, you had a lot of discrepancy in education. So you had the aristocracy that was highly educated, and then you had the other people that weren't educated at all. They couldn't read or write. And so what got passed down, the accuracy of it and so forth, I kind of question. But a lot of that's word of mouth record and everything. I mean, those people were practical and pragmatic, if nothing else. And so that just is the most logical, makes sense track for me.
Yeah.
Particularly like snaffle bits are new in the world of bits. If you were riding or had a horse in a snaffle bit 150 years ago, it was pulling a wagon. They didn't ride them at all until the mid 1900s, basically. So that was not at all a part of that world. So they were going straight into the spade bits for the most part, from the hackamore, just as that's still traditionally done. So that's my belief that makes the most sense. Because just like if any of y'all have had kids and raised kids, they get cranky when they're losing teeth and their mouth's in pain. And so if you don't exacerbate that, you have a better 10-hour day hanging out with that toddler than if you're also adding to that pain and discomfort and all those things by jacking around in their mouth. So
Thank you.
yes, ma'am. Okay, the next question is Christy. So when asking a horse to walk by you, for example, and he's not moving, do you keep asking at the same level or do you escalate the ask? It depends. So it would depend on how green, like if I'm halter breaking a horse, I'm going to be a lot more patient than if this one's already pretty well halter broke. I would want to know why he's hesitating. So like my highest priority of groundwork type stuff is in having the horse's attention on me. So if I go to walk off and my horse is looking at another horse over there, that's a pretty big deal to me because their attention wasn't with me and they didn't leave. So I'm liable to do something pretty sharp at that point to wake them up and get their attention back focused on me and get their feet moving. If this is like the third day of having a halter on, I'm going to be significantly more patient than that. There also would be points in there. Let's say if I'm doing more advanced kind of things with that horse and trying to sharpen them up, a very overlooked part of that process is when the horse does start to get it. So maybe we've had a lick and chew a time or two. You now have to slow down enough where they can kind of redo that thought process. They're literally developing neurons, making a wrinkle in their brain. And so you have to allow for that time. If you don't slow down in those moments and let them think through it and smooth that pathway out and everything, then you're actually prolonging the speed with which they're going to learn and remember, and it's going to become a second nature thing. So I would probably be very, very patient with, a horse that's brand new to it, a lot less patient 2 months later, least patient if if it was a scenario where I know they know what I want, they just weren't paying attention. That's where I'm going to be most harsh in that situation. And then again, I would be fairly patient if I was in the middle of working on something they're actively learning. There's moments in there, it would be the same riding them, where when they're starting to figure out, I can kind of see the wheels turning. That is a hold what you got kind of situation. If you escalate or something in that moment, you're going to distract them, break their concentration, and you have now made this take a lot longer than it needed to. Also, you've set up the path of, you're always teaching a horse, they're learning how to learn. If you make learning a pain in the neck and not fun, you're setting a tone for the entire relationship there. There are also other horses, I'll say, that it's always important to be evaluating the horse that you have. Some of them need a little push or they'll never get there. They're very low motivation type horses, or some of them that you're fixing problems and they have an expectation, but that expectation is wrong. Sometimes you need to hustle them through the door and then let them realize that everything's okay on the other side of the door. So that's really, it's a good question, but it's definitely not one where I have a black and white answer for you because it all depends on what's going on, type of horse, experience of the horse, what the particular reason was for me getting a busy signal. It kind of all comes into play. So
I'm also going to say something here. One, that was not my question. Somebody accidentally sent it to me.
okay.
So I copied, but where are you standing? What message are you sending your horse? Is your position such, like if I turn and look at my mare, she's been trained to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're facing the horse and you're asking it for forward, it might be confused. So what's the handler doing?
I would say that's more common if, like, I could be facing a horse and its face is we're squared up, but I'm now trying to send him off in a circle to the left to lunge him. Right. So I should still have access to forward there. But if I'm trying to get that horse to come straight toward me and something is going on that they're not comfortable with. So trailer loading would be an excellent example of that. I've seen a ton of people that go to lead a horse into a trailer. They step into the trailer. They take about 2 steps. Now the horse is up to the trailer. They turn around and look at the horse. Horse locks up and now he's stuck right there. Well, if you hadn't looked at him, he probably would have stepped right up into the trailer, but you confronted him and shut him down. And I see that sort of pattern over and over and over again. So most of the time, if I'm loading a horse into a trailer, he loads behind me. And I have, I may be looking out of the corner of my eye at him or something, or listening to him, and I can feel pretty much where they are and what they're doing and all. So that could definitely be a part of that. And again, just personality wise or experience wise, what this particular horse needs, it may be a really big deal for that horse to take 1 step toward me and stand 5 feet away. That might be a huge victory with some horses, where other horses may be, spoiled and trying to bowl me over, and I'm having to defend myself. So again, that would just all depend on exactly what I'm dealing with this horse at this time in this situation.
Thanks, Daniel. It's Jocelyn here. Thanks. That was my question. Actually, I accidentally sent it to Chrissy. Thanks for forwarding it. Yeah. Okay. So really, really helpful. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Does that adequately answer it, or are there any other little side parts of that you want to explore?
Well, I just one situation I don't know if you covered, where it's kind of like he's spaced out. Like I'll take a step. It's not that he's paying attention to anything else. It's like he's inside himself and just kind of spaced out. And then he locks up. I start walking off, expecting him to be beside me, and he's just standing there.
So that can be a good thing. Like one of the things that indicates to me is that he's pretty comfortable with you, because if he wasn't comfortable with you, he wouldn't allow himself to space out. But that also, if I know I'm working a horse that has that tendency, I may give him like hey, wake up, pay attention, and now we walk off. Yeah. That way I kind of resolved that before I asked him to do anything. And that way I didn't put him in a position where he missed something or gave me the wrong answer. Does that kind of make sense? So
it does.
I use the kiss as kind of like going, hey, I do that all the time, especially with the young horses and the problem horses. It's a very useful tool. Some of the trainers that I've worked with that are really quiet all the time, it honestly freaks me out. I'm just like, that's such a great tool that you aren't using. Like, why don't you just give them a little, what's softer than a verbal cue? Nothing. I mean, so I find that really, really helpful with horses like that. And having seen you ride your horse and handle him and all, I mean, he is obviously pretty comfortable with you and has been handled a lot. So that makes total sense. I mean, it could be his name, it could be whatever, but some sort of auditory wake up, pay attention before I'm going to put him to work would be probably the thing there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Let's see. Linda has another. She's talking more about the growth plates in the jaw more than the teeth themselves. Okay, so that's essentially what I was talking about with the bump under the jaw. So I don't know if you wrote that before I talked about that or not. Okay, so and I'll say here too, like if y'all hear nutritionally people talking about like the calcium phosphorus ratio, there during the days when we didn't really have that much in commercial feeds, they had a technical term for horses that were fed oats, because oats really would be kind of the perfect balance of everything for a horse, except that the calcium phosphorus ratio is inverted. So you always want 1.1 to 1 or more calcium to phosphorus. The reason for that is in the bones, and I'm nervous saying this because I have a bone doctor on this call, but in the bones, if you don't have more calcium than phosphorus, the phosphorus will replace the calcium in the bones. And that's never more true than when they're growing rapidly, like a growth plate situation. So the term was elephant head because the jaw is one of those that grows rapidly in colts. And so if you feed them oats and they have more phosphorus than calcium, their lower jaw would grow more, and you'd wind up with a disproportionately large head on the horse. So you could kind of look at a 3-year-old and tell if this was an oat fed horse or not. So is that a little extra tangent for you on that one? Okay. Let's see. Christy has another one. Do you discuss emotional bit relationship in the bit class? I see many horses that don't seem to relate to the bit. So yes and no. I use a little different language on that. I don't get real into the emotional side of things. I talk a pretty good bit about body language of the horse and all the various things I would be looking for to be expressed in the mouth and on the head. One thing I do try to say, and I don't like this emotional thing going through the horsemanship world right now, I don't think is good or beneficial, or I think it can be overdone. And I think it often is, because that's what the customer often wants to hear. But that doesn't mean that directly relates to what the horse is actually experiencing. So for instance, like the lifted eyebrow, when they kind of have that triangular look above the eye, that could be physical discomfort, that could be emotional discomfort, that could be it is, those sorts of signs are not black and white. It's not like this means this always. And I feel like that's talked about in that way too much. It is a sign that something uncomfortable is going on. It is not a sign that discomfort is physical, emotional. You have to have kind of more points of data to draw the lines and then discern what that actually means. But it is a singular point, tells you very little, if that makes. There's a good video that goes around on the reels and stuff. It's of this gelding that is really, really sour toward men, and they have like 2 or 3 girls that walk into the stall. Someone's like braiding his mane or something, and the girls walk in there and pet him, and he's perfectly fine. And then this guy walks up, and as soon as he crosses the threshold into the stall, ears back, eyes up, I mean, you could tell the horse just hates this guy, right? And if you zoomed in, you'd see that triangular eyebrow but does it mean that all of a sudden his hock was inflamed because the guy walked in, or there was a hot nail or a bit? It doesn't. It kind of shows his displeasure. So the mouth can be the same way. I have seen horses that were expressing a lot through their mouth because saddle fit was a problem, or they were sore in the hind end, or so on the emotional side of things, a lot of these body language signs, I'm looking for a clear pattern of multiple things that I can directly correlate with this one thing. So that one thing could be an emotional trigger. It could be a behavioral trigger. It could be a physical. Like if I got the triangular eye every time I did a circle to the left, right? That now I've got a more clear pattern that would indicate pain or something like that. The same with the mouth. If I'm asking them to go left and they're having a little trouble coming through, that could be a TMJ problem because the jaw has to articulate a little bit for them to do that. If I'm seeing asymmetry different one way than the other, that would be more indicative to me than a singular deal. So in terms of emotion, the way that I view that is more from the classical conditioning side of things, which is, does the horse have a pleasant or unpleasant association with the bit or being ridden? And that's how I'm going to view the emotional stuff. And I try not to say positive or negative because that gets too close into operant conditioning and positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, which have different meanings altogether. So what I want to try to set up through proper fit, proper adjustment, using my hands correctly, using the proper or a bit that's appropriate for the training stage and what we're trying to accomplish with that horse. Hopefully I am setting up a situation where they have a pleasant association with the bit. I definitely don't ever want to be in a scenario where I'm picking up on a rein and that horse braces against me immediately. I think I've talked about this a lot of times on the podcast, but I used to do a virtual coaching deal where you would send a video clip of you working your horse to me up to 20 minutes long, and then I would put it in a video editor and could speed it up, slow it down, and draw lines and tell you, this is what I'm seeing right here and everything. And when I started doing that and I started slowing videos down, I noticed a ton of horses out there that when the people would pick up on the reins, that horse would go it would be just a microsecond where the eyes would close and you would see them flinch a little bit. And when I started seeing that in slow motion, then I started seeing it in real life, and I see it all over the place. And so my big fix for that is just slow down, let the horse see you coming, and they won't tend to brace up against you. But as far as directly getting into emotions, that's about as much as I do that. And if I could wind up with a pleasant association to the bit and the training and all of the aids, then I can morph that into really helping the horse. I'm also now able to feel the horse because I'm aware of what's going on and I'm paying attention to the micro body language and all the little things. And so that gives me now the opportunity and the tools to help that horse relax, release tension and all those things. And now we have access to what they can really do. So does that sufficiently answer your question, Christy?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. I don't ride my mare very much, but I finally got I'm going to call it a kit. I got her in a snaffle bit, got my slobber reins on, got out my 7-foot leather reins, rode her I ride in my English dressage saddle, and I tried not to use the reins at all. And because that's what I got the slobbers on, that's my red, my trainer always said green is they're straight down, yellows they're coming back a little bit, reds like you don't want them red, pulling straight back. And I thought, okay, this is going to help me keep my hands still and not be sending unwanted messages. And it was beautiful. So I just kind of wondered about this because when I first got her, it seems like she kind of chomped the bit more. And of course, I've had her 5 years, so we must have made some progress because she's not chomping the bit. She's not yawning constantly when I'm riding her. Or even when I'm working her on the ground, she's quit yawning so much. And so I just kind of wondered about, because this, you said something about the emotional relationship a horse might have with the bit, which is like you said, the cringing. They're like, oh, now what's going to happen? So yeah, I mean, it all makes perfect sense.
So like what you're talking about there is she quit yawning. Yawning is generally a release of tension and a literal stretch of certain structures in the head and neck and throat area. And so we know your horse had some trauma when you first started working with her. And so it makes sense she was releasing that, but it's also a good thing that we see it over, if we looked at her snapshot every 6 months, we would hope to see that she's doing less and less of that because she has retained and is dealing with and working her way through most of that.
Finally figured out that somebody's not going to beat the crap out of her or run her into the ground. Basically. And so, so she still does some yawning, but I mean, a few years ago, it would have just been like, I've never seen a horse yawn this much. And
that can, I've never gotten my hands on your horse, but like she could have even had damage in the hyoid and tongue area down there, and through all of the releasing and getting her to yawn like you're doing, she's stretched and strengthened and potentially even worked some of that out if she did actually have a physical problem going on.
Yes. She has, it feels slow and long because we're going on 6 years, but the progress is definitely there. She still has problems with her body, and God only knows what happened to her. Her hind end is kind of shot, but I'll ride her moderately. I still plan on that. I'm doing therapy with her constantly. Now I have another question for you. And this has come up, and this is it's kind of what I'm seeing, and you mentioned it a little bit. There's so much like these days saying, oh, natural horsemanship is just teaching your horse to shut off and ignore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't remember the word. Learned helplessness. That's what I think. All the.
So, natural horsemanship's not a term that I use, and to be honest, like what it originally described, at least to me, was using the natural psychology and herd behaviors of the horse to your advantage, so that you were kind of coming at the horse in a manner that they could more readily absorb.
But I feel like it's got taken into run them in the round pen and kind of.
So that's not harsh. Necessarily natural horsemanship. That's someone's version of natural horsemanship, along with what they feel like they need to do to sell a new line of hats and t-shirts and carrot sticks and whips and underwear with their face on the back of it, and all of the other various things. And they have to seem different from someone else, so they have to discredit part of what the more popular people say and put their own spin on it. And this is what's really going on. And and you go through 30 years of that, and now it's morphed into some perversion of what it originally was meant to be, which is why I don't use the term. It's not like I don't disagree with what it originally was, but I don't want to be associated with what it has become.
Right. Because I see in when I watch your videos and I see you handling the horse, you're using some of the methods and the ideas, but I feel like you have that wisdom of moderation. What I'm wondering is, like, I haven't really been using a particular program. I was using a program that, I modified it because I'm a old grandma, and I'm more gentle and I go slow. I am so slow. People hate how I work because I work really slow. And I'm just wondering if doing that kind of program, having step, would give the horse more confidence and a sense of safety, because you're doing something more steady, and I don't know what to call it.
that's a complex question, and I would say yes and no. In reality, I'll
Darn.
say that the program thing you're talking about, that is 98% for y'all and 2% for the horse. People who we're teaching want a recipe as to how to do this, and it simplifies our lives. I really could compare that a lot to cooking. You were giving me a compliment about moderation and wisdom. It's just because I've cooked enough that I know where I don't feel tied to the recipe. I just need an acid and a fat, but I can choose avocado or canola oil, right? So, and I'm confident enough and experienced enough that I know we're going to get there in the end, and this is going to taste good. So if you get too much in the methods and the kind of, I call it tab A and the slot B type horsemanship, there's always going to be a ton of horses that fall through the cracks of that because they needed you to deviate at some point because that horse didn't have this problem, or they were more sensitive to this, or you needed to change up the order again because of something specific to this individual. And so if it's easier on you, it's probably harder on the horse. And if it's more philosophical and takes a lot of years to get it figured out, that's going to be harder on you, but easier on the horse because it isn't too formulaic and too much of a recipe that puts all horses into the same round hole, whether they're a square peg or not.
Yeah.
So, which I think is all within the bounds of what natural horsemanship was intended to be and should be. I also would say, a lot of this stuff, again, with the recipe and all that, even the term natural horsemanship, right? Like that's just someone's organizational structure of how they view that it should be. It doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. It's more of an opinion. I think peanut butter with strawberry jelly is the best sandwich. So that's what I'm going to show you all how to do. But there's no operant conditioning. That is just how this group of people viewed the organizational structure. They set that up and they tested it and everything seemed to fall within it. It doesn't mean that there aren't other ways that it can be done or flexibility that can happen. This was the verbiage that they chose. So you mentioned learned helplessness a minute ago. I actually just wrote a pretty big article on that within the last month. To my understanding, in the real terms and origins of that term, learned helplessness is an extreme state, the kind most people will never see. And if you do see it, you're not gonna like what you see. Like it is pushing a horse to the point of zombie-like behavior. So you might go back and learn. I won't rehash that whole article, but I think that's one of those terms that's become fashionable to talk about. But what they're talking about is a far diluted state of what the term actually means. And I think, again, that's generally for the credit of the person and not the reality of the horse.
Mm-hmm.
Learned helplessness is not something that happens in a 2-minute time period. It's a life-changing. They will literally stay in that state to death. It's a tonic trance like state, meant for, if you think of when the lion catches the gazelle, the lion doesn't make sure the gazelle is dead before it starts eating the gazelle. It just starts eating it as soon as it can hold it down. And so nature has built in where there's a shut off and they don't feel pain when they're in that state. In that article, I talked about a guy that had a donkey that sat down on the ground, sold up, wouldn't load in the trailer, and he decided he would build a fire under the donkey.
Yeah.
I think that was a Western Horseman article is where I got that from years ago. And the donkey didn't get up from the fire. He had to put the fire out and then have the vet come out to deal with, third degree or first degree burns, whatever it was on the donkey, because pain at that point literally isn't felt. That's what learned helplessness is. That animal will die without leaving that state.
Mm-hmm.
So just because this horse doesn't want to get in the trailer, that's not learned helplessness. That's a much, much milder problem. Thank God. That's a good thing that it's not learned helplessness, but very few people have actually seen that.
Sadly, I think my previous gelding he pretty much ignored the world around him. It was pretty scary took a year or so to get him out of that, where he'd actually responded more to what was going on around him.
Yes, ma'am. And Linda has said here, shut down and learned helplessness are two different degrees. I would agree with that. I
Okay.
think that's a good
Okay.
way to
Yep.
think about it. So I've seen, a lot of those old show horses that kind of have no light in their eyes.
Yeah.
That's shut down. I agree. That's not a good thing. But it's not learned helplessness. Not
Oh, okay.
truly.
Okay.
All right.
That would have been my gelding then, because he was definitely a show horse and he was dead. He was dead. His eyes were dead when
Mhm.
I got him.
But that's,
Okay. Okay.
that's 1 mile down a 5 mile dead end road.
Yep,
It's not,
yep.
it's not as bad as it gets. So, there
But
was
do you-
another question.
Yep, there is.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering about like with the way that you work with your horses, do you think that the methodology does help them to have more confidence because you're giving them a consistency and a
So,
certainty?
so yes and no. What I'm trying to do is,
Why do I do that?
well, no, it's a good question. It just doesn't have a simple answer. So if I'm not pushing the horse, then I'm not challenging them somewhat, then we don't ever progress. So if I'm too consistent, that's stagnant,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So I have to purposefully be changing the game. There has to be enough consistency that they're comfortable and I don't rob them of all of their confidence. I'm not just throwing them into the deep end of the pool, but I do want to, progress to deeper and deeper water over the course of riding them in a month or 6 months or a year, whatever the deal is. So that's part of the challenge of reading the horse and having some experience and some wisdom, is that when to push and when not to push. And not every day is progress. Sometimes a horse is doing good and you've pushed too far, and you ride the next week like you did a month ago, and you might get frustrated because you're having to back up, but you pushed them too far out of their comfort zone. You lost some confidence, and now you have to go build the confidence back, and you can't push for a little while,
Okay.
So
That's what I needed to hear. Okay.
yeah. So it just doesn't have a black and white.
Yes, yes. And that's what makes it frustrating, because you're back and forth, and like you say, you have your good days and your bad, and you wonder if you're making progress, but you probably
Yes,
are.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Yeah, it really is a good idea if you're training your own horse, like to keep a journal, because
Yes.
sometimes that progress happens so slowly you don't realize that it does. But if you look at what you were doing 6 months ago, then you go, oh yeah, I remember that. I hadn't thought about that in a while, but we did have a huge problem there, and that's gone. I still have problems, but they're not the same problems that I had. And now I can see objectively that I have made progress.
Yeah.
Because sometimes
I am currently doing a journal. I went back to doing that. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so consistency can be beneficial, but like everything, too much of it isn't beneficial. It just holds you where you are.
Right, like
And
adding
it also
something
leads to,
new, knowing when to
like
add something
you were
new.
talking about, you were talking about the natural horsemanship and how it can lead to really bored horses. That's when I have these 7 groundwork exercises that I do for 20 minutes every day, whether I need to or not. Well, 6 months later, that horse's brain is shut off. You're not in any way accomplishing what you wanted to originally accomplish with that stuff anymore. So it has to be evolving and changing and be challenging while also being comfortable. If you do the same thing ritualistically all the time, you will absolutely shut their brain off.
Okay.
So, all right. What about, and I don't know who asked this, it just says iPad, but what about when we have to actually pick up on them to do a job? So that kind of ties in, shouldn't they know both? That kind of ties in with what I was just saying. So I'm gonna, stretch and push. So one of the things you'll hear a whole lot about is like parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system. And people will often say like the parasympathetic is where you want to train a horse. It is, but oftentimes sympathetic is where you want to use a horse. So it's not like parasympathetic is good and sympathetic is bad. sympathetic's kind of your gas pedal. What I want to be able to do, if we looked at again on a sliding scale and we thought about extremes, if we pretended the balance point was 5 and 1 through 5 was the parasympathetic rest and digest, and 5.1 to 10 was sympathetic. Well, fight or flight is that 9 to 10, freezes that 8 to 10, but a good barrel run or chasing a cow across a pasture is like 7 to 10. And that's a place I need to be able to operate my horse. And so we do the slower training, and then we kind of gradually add some speed. We have to back off, and I think of it like a ratchet. I go over here about as far as I can, and then I have to come back over here, get my horse comfortable again, and then I go back over here and add some speed. And if you can walk that razor blade, you don't blow your horse up, but you do get really high performance. If you don't come back to the parasympathetic enough, you blow your horse up. You have the barrel horse at the NFR that 7 men have to lead into the arena, right? Or the Olympic level dressage horse. If y'all want to watch something funny, Google Olympic dressage horse bloopers on YouTube, and you can watch hours of $500,000 horses walking into arena and then running off or rearing straight up or whatever, because like they're right on the edge of that cliff, and on this particular Tuesday they couldn't hold the edge. They fell off. So yeah, I definitely believe in pushing a horse at times, but that's where the experience and the wisdom comes in of what's too much, what's not enough, and so forth. You have to kind of toggle back and forth between. So does that, I'm not sure who asked that, but does that answer that sufficiently? Okay. I hope it did. Yes. Okay. Miss Tammy asks, what are my thoughts on Liberty work? Is that an advanced goal? Is it the ultimate in connection with your horse that so many say it is? Is there a lot of benefit to it? Just curious. So I'm not personally real big on it. I think the beginning stages of it, where you kind of do have your horse hooked on to you and so forth, I think that's where most of the benefit is. I think taking it to higher and higher levels, and this would be true of any training, including riding, you get most of the good, like the 80% of all you're ever going to get happens in the first couple of months. And then you spend the next 2 years trying to polish up and refine that last 20%. And so as far as the actual relationship with my horse and the benefits that I'm going to get with Liberty, that's actually going to happen right on the front end pretty early and pretty quickly. It is also the kind of thing that if you do it to more advanced levels and the horse gets really comfortable with it, you can wind up with a horse that will follow all kind of commands at Liberty and still has their brain turned off and has the glassed over eyes and is kind of just going through the motions, even though what they appear to be doing is pretty high level stuff. And so where you're putting the ultimate in connection in quotes, that's kind of what I would question is how necessarily we get to that level, and whether it was about the horse's attention and how much they were enjoying it. Because just like with anything, some of them are going to get bored at points. And if you plow ahead with the same course in those areas, they're going to get sour. If you maybe take a break from Liberty and go do this other thing for a month and then come back to it, kind of that cross training type of a thing, then you come back to it and it's freshened up, and they'll be a lot happier to do that thing again. So I think it carries all of the benefits and risks that doing anything else carries. It can be done well, it can be done poorly. You could bore a horse to death with it. You could develop a very good relationship with it. It would just all depend. I will say that, like, what a lot of people tend to think of as Liberty, some of the movie stunts and that kind of stuff, I have a little bit of personal experience with this. Sometimes what that horse, you don't necessarily want to know how the sausage is made. even though what they showed you on screen looked really cool. So
Yeah.
some of those really high performance things, you would not want to personally go through what they did to get that horse to do that.
Well, you
So
remember the little mare I had that was rearing,
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
and you're like, somebody trained her to do that.
Yeah, I think so. So like training a horse to rear, or even some of the airs above the ground and dressage type things. I think the capriole is the one where they jump up and kick out and all. Like you're provoking that with a whip, and
Yeah.
you're instigating them and agitating them, and they are inevitably going to get frustrated and have enough and decide to fight a little bit, and then you reward that, and then you shape it, and now you have a horse that'll do something that looks really cool. But there's no way to get there without having agitated that horse pretty significantly first.
And
You know,
I
so
certainly don't want that happening on the trail ride.
yeah, yes, ma'am. So there was even there's a pretty good video of this happened during one of the shows at the Spanish school of the guy doing the in-hand work of I think it's the capriole, the one where the horse kicks out, and he accidentally got kicked by the horse. I mean, just tagged him right in the thigh, probably broke the guy's leg, and he did everything he could to just stand there. And one of the others comes and hustles up and takes the reins, and they do the spotlight, and then they carry him off the field, basically. And like, did that horse kick that guy on purpose? I don't know. Depends on what happened the week before when they were training on that, So
what's the difference there between that? Like, I've actually been to the Spanish riding school. I mean, it's beautiful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the difference? Like, to me, that's training more for, I don't know what the word, like more for obedience rather than a connection. From what I'm hearing people talk about liberty, that's seems a little different.
Yes, ma'am. So again, I would say that like that word connection, that could be more on that emotional side of things. That's more referencing what you're wanting out of this relationship and really doesn't take into account horses and what horses really are so much. I don't know that I would say rarely have I seen relationships with horses that was as strong from the horse's side as it was from the person's side. So like if you want to see connection, I don't remember the name. It's something, the blind horse, the Appaloosa that's missing both eyes, and the lady's train. I think he's in Washington or Oregon or somewhere up there.
Oregon.
That's a connection. Oregon, yes, ma'am. That horse implicitly trusts that lady. On the other hand, if he had both eyes, would that be the same relationship? Because he kind of has to trust her at this point in time. I think we see a lot more of that or we're exposed to a lot more of that in training than we recognize for what it is. So like riding behind the vertical, you're putting a horse in a position where he cannot see where he's going. That's one of the first things we talk about in the bit video and the bit course and all. That is submission through blindness. So do all of the trainers that are doing that understand that that's what that is? I don't think so, but I think it gets them the results that they want. But the reality is you're putting a horse in a position because of the way his eye works where he can't see 3 feet in front of him. And so he has no choice but to default to you and your control and be obedient because, he literally can't see where Endo, the blind horse.
Endo, yeah. I was just talking to Bill about that tonight, that horse. Pretty amazing relationship. I mean, he has to completely trust the rider for everything. And
like that horse, if that horse didn't already have a good relationship with her before he went blind, then that would have been a very different scenario. Right.
I mean, I know if I die today, my horses aren't going to go grieve over my death. So,
Yeah. That's what, like, the emotional thing to me is I honestly view it as mostly a sales ploy. just to be frank with y'all, I mean, most of the customers are women. Y'all do have a more of a tendency to want that sort of a thing, but it doesn't mean that the horse actually feels what you would want them to feel. It's just a romantic sort of a thing, and I kind of feel like that takes a little bit of advantage of that. Do horses have emotions and feelings? They absolutely do. Are they as strong and complex as human emotions and feelings? Absolutely not. You know, and that's me being completely honest with you. Think about like mares and foals, like what Rich was talking about. You know, imagine how many of you ladies that have had a kid could have your baby at 6 months old taken away from you, and 2 days later you'd have just been like, right? Is that the reaction you would have? No. So they aren't the same level of emotional and all of that we are, and that's just reality. You know.
Right.
So.
But you were taught, well, I guess I'm thinking about like the join up.
So that's a registered trademark term. I can't actually say that out loud without owing a royalty to somebody. So I'm not going to use that term, but you can.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, that's kind of what I've been taught, you know, with the horse. You want him to join up to you, you know, and then speaking with like Richard Boatwright, you know, I'm going to be having, you know, Tucker do some training with him. And he said, I don't ever want a horse to join up with me. I'm roping. That horse needs to stay put. So is it just, is it very like discipline specific or?
Well, I would say that it does have a tendency to do with what your goals are. So I know exactly where Richard is coming from on that, and he has his specific reasons for not wanting a horse to hook on to you. I'm kind of the opinion where if I'm working a colt in the round pen and it's there and it's available, I'll spend 20 minutes working on it. I'm not going to spend 4 hours working on it. It's not worth the time value isn't there for me. And in actuality, like if Richard were to work on a horse wanting to come to him all the time, when he gets to the roping stages, he now has to work to undo that and then teach a solid ground tie as a separate cue. Right. So if he starts that process in the beginning, it actually means more work and more complications down the road, and a potential where that horse thought this is what you wanted, and now you're changing the rules on me, and now do I trust you and all that. So it's kind of a can of worms he would just rather not open.
Well, my horse will follow you everywhere. Like he's just in your space. He doesn't.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, he's like the black lab, you know.
So he would have to be taught a very consistent ground tie in order to do the things Richard would want to do with him. I would say that probably like 98% of horses, that's not going to be a problem, but in that specific use, it would be.
Okay.
So.
All right. Yeah. So I've never done a Zoom chat before, so I was trying to figure it all out.
Okay. We got another question. The walking challenge. Oh, did somebody else have something? Okay. Did I cut you off, Miss Tammy?
No, I was just trying to find mute.
Okay. This is from Terry. The walking challenge that I've started, I'm assuming it is to challenge us to learn how to control and understand the footfalls. That's exactly what it is. If you come out of that being able to perform 70% of that challenge, then you have won. Most people are simply not very aware of the feet and the footfalls and all of that. I've said this 100 times, but I think it's the perfect example. When I do clinics, I've done this for a dozen years now. I'll just have the people participating form a semicircle, and I'll ask them all to ride forward 7 steps and stop on the 7th step. And only about a year ago, I had 3 out of 12 people do that on the first try. The record was 2 for a decade or more. And that should be a pretty simple request that anybody can accomplish. I could probably do that on like 90% of the colts I start on like the 3rd ride. I could walk 7 steps and stop on the 7th step. So if you've got an 8-year-old you've had for 5 years and you can't do that, there's only one reason, and it's because you're not aware of what the feet are doing and you're not asking them to do specific things. And so that's really the whole point. I'm going to do one of those every month, different pattern. I kind of toyed with this one. I would say this one's kind of a medium level of hard, or maybe a low high sort of a level of hard. It could, we could get out of the walk and add more complexity to it, but I think that's probably beyond 90% of people's ability to successfully do. So I kind of wanted to smoke y'all in the beginning where you went, oh, there's a whole lot more to this than I've really been aware of. But now you're churning and you're asking some questions and you got some motivation and some goals, and it's at the walk. So in the winter, when you're probably locked in your barn, you can still, you don't have to have an area where you can lope 80-foot circles or anything. So that is kind of the purpose of it. I will say too, when you start to get a feel for the feet and you work on, horses really learn best when you have very simple and very specific goals. And then you do that repetitiously until they get it and it becomes second nature. So something like step forward with your left front foot is a simple and specific goal. And so that's where they're going to actually have success and figure out the language simplest. It's like teaching a kindergartner their ABCs. And as I was just saying, there's lots of people that have been riding a horse for 5 years and they start this and then they realize that the horse didn't actually know their ABCs. So that's kind of the point. How do I count steps? Is it each foot? So for this challenge and for the next several, we're only counting the front feet. Okay, that is adding a layer of difficulty, and a pretty significant layer of difficulty is to start to count and feel and control the hind feet. That's getting definitely on the more challenging end of the scale. So my general rule of thumb with that is that I've had plenty of people that I worked with them on the front feet, and they could count footfalls and timing in 1 to 3 rides, is kind of most people will get that 1 to 3 rides on the front end. The average for finding the hind feet and having a pretty good bead on them by yourself is more like 20 rides. So the hind feet are significantly more difficult to feel than the front feet are for most people. Every once in a while you get a person that they just pick up the hind feet right away, but most people struggle with it. I always give the warning when you open that can of worms, it's the kind of thing that at some point will probably have you crying in the shower in the fetal position. So it is difficult, and just be prepared for that. There's going to come a day when you're drinking a glass of wine cussing me, and why did I ever start this and all. So just know that on the front end, that's normal. You're not alone. Everybody does. That's just the way it goes. But when you get to the other side of it, the world's your oyster at that point. You'll have more feeling for a horse than 99% of the people out there riding them around. So, in that same vein, what do I consider the basics for a rider? So for a rider, I do consider kind of feeling the feet to be probably the thing that transitions you from basic into intermediate type horsemanship. Working on your timing. I mean, I guess the real way that I think about it is that if you're in kind of the novice category, which I would say is probably 60-70% of all riders. Okay. So if what I'm about to say describes you, don't feel insulted. It's where most people are. A horse is not better for them having ridden it. So if you're going to get on a horse, they're actually going to degrade a little bit most of the time until they kind of find your level. So you could take my demo horse that'll do bridleless bareback lead changes, and you could get on him and then give him to you for 2 years, and he would look like a horse that's had 60 days of 60 rides. That's your novice horse. The horse is going to come right down to that level. An intermediate level horseman could keep a horse kind of where they are maybe improve them a little bit, maybe lose a little ground depending on certain skills, but they're not going to lose so much ground. And then advanced horsemen are, the horse will be better for them having ridden it, and they'll add value to it. So that's generally how I characterize that. And so I'll also say so we talked about cooking earlier, like we have Michelin star chefs. Well, there's Michelin star Chinese restaurants, Michelin star French restaurants, right? So what we're looking at there is cooking food, not the exact type of food. So you could have a dressage rider who could definitely take a dressage horse to the upper levels, but they may be completely lost on a cutting horse. And the cutting horse guy may be completely lost on the gaited horse, so they are an expert, but kind of only in their area most of the time. Basics for a horse to me, mostly about direction and rate and controlling the different body parts. Front end first for me, like a horse, if we're considering basics, you could walk, trot, and lope without a whole lot of trouble. You can turn left and turn right. You can move the front end pretty decently and the hind end somewhat. The main changes that are going to move you into intermediate and advanced horsemanship are going to deal with the hind end. So just like your ability to learn and feel the hind end is a lot longer of a process than the front end, training the hind end is also a lot longer process than training the front end. So if I'm starting colts and all, the front end, normally we're going to have pretty good control over that in a matter of months. Real control over the hind end is years. It's that sort of a deal. And that also involves strengthening, gaining balance, and then like positions of the neck and head and those sorts of things would be more on the advanced end. That's not the kind of stuff I'm really worrying with 2-year-olds much at all, unless they have a real problem, and then we kind of have to crack that seal earlier than I would like to. I do think one of the plagues in the horse business right now is that people are trying to get vertical flexion on young horses well before they should. And that should be something that's put off a little ways. It's more the hood ornament on the car. It's kind of the last thing. When the feet are correct and all, the head tends to take care of itself. If you try to work on the head first and the feet second, then the feet tend to never get taken care of. And we do tend to cripple a lot of horses by doing that sort of stuff. So, love this idea. I assume that's the walk-in challenge. Thank you. I hope y'all are doing that. And I am trying to encourage, like, we're going to give away 2 virtual coaching sessions there. One will be for a winner of it, and then one will just be for some random person who tried it. So don't feel like even if you don't think it's going to come out well, that it's not worth trying it and putting yourself out there. If you try them for 6 months and you stay consistent with it, I can promise you're going to go back to the first one, and it's going to be easy for you at that point, so fail your way forward and figure out where your weaknesses are and how to overcome them. And if y'all have specific questions about that, I'm happy to answer them here too. So you can write one down in the chat, and I'll be glad to address it here.
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we go back to the jaw and the mouth for a second?
Sure.
So I got a 2-year-old coming 3, and he constantly wants to play with the bit. He's in an O-ring snaffle. And it's just constant play. Had the equine dentist come out, had his teeth floated. His wolf teeth are just starting to emerge. They didn't want to try to pop them out because they were afraid that they weren't out far enough that they might shatter, and then we'd have a bigger issue. So I don't know if the bit is interfering with those wolf teeth, where they're just starting to pop out, or whether he's just enjoying playing with the bit. Don't know whether to just to switch him over to a Basel and just work him with that for a while, or
you could try that. Like I would have a few questions. A lot of times the horses that are mouthier, and I think this is the horse you asked me about several weeks ago, same horse.
Yeah.
So does he ever have an oral type of a fixation when you're not working him? Like,
no,
would you walk out
like trying to bite at you or snip at you, or
well, not you necessarily, but just is he a mouthier horse? Could you envision walking up to him in the paddock when you're not messing with him at all, and he's sitting there playing with his tongue or mouthing on something or biting this, or so he's not doing? Because like I've seen horses that I had a Frisian mare I started a couple of years ago, and before I had ever done anything with her, she'd never had a bit in her mouth. I walked up to her when she was tied, second day she was here, and she's got her tongue hanging out the side of her mouth, and she's just slapping herself with her tongue, just playing. So like if I saw that horse playing with a bit, she just has an oral fixation. It's not actually bit related. It just is her.
Right. Yeah, no.
He could also be, those wolf teeth coming in. He could be having incisors change at that rate. So he could have some discomfort in his mouth, and he's just expressing that. And the bit kind of it's like giving a 5-year-old kid a piece of chewing gum and then wondering why they're smacking their mouth because you gave them something to play with now. I would probably try that horse in a Bosal or something else and see if he still expresses that stuff in any way or if he gets quiet. One thing, there's a way that you can tie the bit up to encourage it. Like, is he trying to put his tongue over it or anything like that, or he keeps it in a reasonable position?
Originally he kept trying to put his tongue over it. Now he's not. He's just playing with it. So
like one thing I wouldn't do is leave a horse like that unattended with the bit. So I wouldn't tie him up for 3 hours with a bit in his mouth type stuff, probably.
Okay.
Because I think you've done this long enough that you may be just reinforcing a bad behavior at this point. So I might try, this could even be in a stall or something, just putting the bit in his mouth and standing there beside him. And when he goes to playing with it, grab the ring and kind of bump him a little bit or something. And then when he quits, you quit. And you're actually punishing it technically, but you're not really doing it. I'm not talking about jerking on it or anything that's going to cause him pain. You just start annoying him when he does that behavior, and then you stop annoying him when he stops, and then he learns to relax. And I've seen some horses that had bit problems for years that I solved in 10 minutes like that. So that would be probably the first thing I would try. Just a few sessions of 10 or 15 minutes, just standing there beside him. Sometimes horses don't really, like if he's a little bit of a hotter natured horse, some of those horses that'll come in and they can't stand still.
Yeah,
riding them or getting on. So, just sometimes you'll have those kind of horses, and you'll have to wrestle them a little bit to get them to stand still. And the hardest thing is consistently releasing on them, even when you feel like they're going to take off again. But there comes a point at which they realize they can stand still and that it's going to be okay. And they get comfortable enough with it. And then it's like a light goes on and all the problems but you may be, hours before you hit that point where that light comes on. So this can be that kind of a thing too, where you play with them, put them to work every time they get to mouth it on the bit. You're technically punishing the behavior, but all punishment means is that you're adding something to make a behavior less likely to reoccur. It doesn't mean you're beating them overhead with a 2x4 with nails driven through it or anything like that. So that's probably the next thing I would try with that horse.
Okay. And then the other thing with your walking exercise, maybe I'm just dense here. Would it be possible on the pattern for you to draw arrows on which way you want?
There are arrows on it.
Are there? I guess I'm just blind. Okay.
Yes, sir. you can. I sent out 2 emails with that. There's one where it's an attached PDF, so you could print it out or blow it up or anything. But there are some arrows in there that are indicating this direction of turn and that kind of thing.
Okay. I guess I was probably looking at it on my phone and I just blind.
Yes, sir.
So
yeah.
Okay. And if anybody could see me eating my dinner, I have to apologize. So
no, your video's
I don't know.
On, so.
No. Okay. All right. So this first time Cynthia tried to cook dinner in like 3 months, and I wasn't going to try to stop her. So
yes, sir. Very good.
So
I'm glad she's feeling better.
Yeah, better's not. Yeah. So, but yeah.
Up to cooking supper anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So anyway, all right. So you can remute me.
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right.
So I think we've got, do we count the step our horses takes to square up before stopping? No, I tried to write it this way, but I intend for the horse to stop and then square up. And so, ideally we can do that all in one motion, but on a greener horse and you're just starting this, that's, we don't get to start with our goal. So I wouldn't expect that right in the beginning. I would rather him square up with 2 little check steps than 8, but you start where you start and then you try to progress it from there. So again, don't look at that. I don't want that to be the kind of thing that gives someone anxiety because they're not getting it perfectly. If you're better on December 31st than you were on December 1st, that is what matters. Whether you aced it isn't really the point. Okay. Can you rise to the level of your horse? Hopefully, by continuing lessons and coaching only with me. I need some hope. I'm not going to drag my horse down. So, that's one of those tricky things about trying to put the right horse with the right person. Ideally, you want kind of a gap. I would rather you overmatched somewhat where you have to kind of grow into your horse, but that gap has to be crossable. We don't want you having to climb Everest to be able to get along with this one. And that's not always the perfect thing to set up. Sometimes there's I think kind of a thing. And, then you have the horses that are a sure bet, 25, been there, done that, all the experience. So, can you rise to the level of your horse? Sure. A lot of times. Is that you, Miss Tammy Waldron, that asked that question? Okay, so I don't want to embarrass you or give out any proprietaries, but like with your previous horse, y'all were a setup that I was and there was a gap there, but I thought that you were gonna make it, but it was gonna push you a bunch. And in my mind, that was actually successful. I mean, y'all went over a year and y'all were fine, and then we had.
I think it was a success too.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of had that one bad day, and it was just sort of that series of unfortunate events that wound up being what it was. So, that's actually the position I would, for someone's first horse, I want them on that safe, secure, they can't hardly mess up. But I would also like to see that 2 years in, they're bored and ready for something to step up on. So that would kind of be the deal that I'm ideally looking for.
I mean, I know I'm a better rider because of Hank. So
yes, ma'am. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, just the conversations that we were having through that process, it was very evident that you were growing and learning and realizing lots and lots of stuff, and you got to feel things on him you weren't going to feel on a less sensitive.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
horse,
he taught me what it was supposed to feel like.
Yes, ma'am. So by continuing lessons and coaching, I mean, I think that's you're gonna. I mean, I didn't have lessons in coaching. I kind of learned all of this stuff the hard way, but that that meant a lot of frustration and a lot of horses that I didn't do as good a job on as I might have. So that's part of what the lessons in coaching are. We're trying to smooth that path and get some obstacles out of the way for you where, it doesn't involve lots of heartache or pain or scars or broken bones or anything like that.
Exactly.
And you need some hope. Yeah, I don't know the new horse that you're on right now, but everything I've heard about him seems good. And I have a lot of faith in Richard over there helping you out and everything too. So I'm very optimistic for you with this new one. So
yeah, I am too. I think we have a
yes,
lot to learn together. So I'm sure we'll
yeah,
jump on some video lessons with you.
absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
If I can just figure out the technology part, that is the hard part.
It's basically this.
Okay.
We do them over Zoom, just like this, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. If you just have wireless earbuds and a tripod to put your phone on, then we can work
Okay.
with that.
Oh,
I
good.
know Alyssa and Jocelyn have both done lessons like that. We usually start off kind of identifying, okay, when you go over there, you walked out of the picture, so don't go that far right anymore. And then here's where you go left. And then if you go too far away, I can't see you with enough clarity to say anything, but you're going to run out of earbud range anyway. So really and truly, the scope of what your phone will film actually fits the virtual lessons pretty well.
Well,
So,
that's good. Sounds like it's working well.
yes, ma'am. Yeah, I was leery of it too at first. I mean, it but it really does seem to be working out pretty decently, and with the little things that you lack, like I would always love to put hands on the horse and feel this for you, and put my hand in the mouth and what the tongue is doing, and you have a hyoid problem or whatever, but we also do get to record these where we don't get to do that in a live lesson. So there's trade-offs to things. You can go back and watch it 4 times and see what I was seeing in that moment. Or I really think video is one of the greatest things to aid riders. Like I know myself when I was still apprenticing coming out of college, that was really when I started to feel the feet. And I started to feel a lot of mistakes that I wasn't aware of before. And it actually made me really insecure because I thought now, everybody's watching me and they can see all these imperfections happening.
Yeah.
And this was back when camcorders were this big box on your shoulder, and I had a
I
customer
remember
that had
those.
one, and they filmed me riding, and I went back and watched the ride, and I was like, oh, you can't see all that stuff I'm feeling anymore. I'm feeling things that aren't the eye can't pick up. So this doesn't look nearly as bad as I thought it looked. And my confidence kind of came back up. So I
That's
think
great.
video is a huge tool.
Do you prefer it over doing the live clinics now, do you think?
No.
No.
I would, live clinics are my favorite thing to do. There isn't really a substitute for being able to put my hands on the horse or hold a rein and say, here, feel this. This is what you should, that kind of stuff. But it's a good, Miss Jocelyn's in the Yukon. There's no way I could pop in for a lesson with her. So it's kind of the next best thing. So yeah,
absolutely. I'm sure I'll take advantage of it at some point.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, thanks for answering that question and giving me hope.
No problem. Are there any other questions? Miss Linda had to leave.
I've got a couple questions. One of them's kind of general and one of them's pretty specific to a particular horse I'm working with. So I don't know if you have a preference.
Oh, go ahead. Whichever one.
Well, the specific horse, he is a very well-trained individual. He's not very old, maybe 6. I don't really know his history other than they bought him off of a video, and they could stand up and do a bullwhip and rope off of him and ride him through the woods, and he's got buttons I don't know what to do with. Like, this horse is trained. He will also buck your ass off when he gets insecure, and his rider, his owner, doesn't know how to hold him together through that. If you can hold him together, he'll pretty much stay with you. And I don't know how to help bridge that gap, especially without her taking very many lessons. So I'm working with him and not as much working with her. And I don't know how to help him bridge that gap.
So the first thing I would try to aim for is, like, probably what she has there is a little bit of trouble reading him because she's not I'm gathering from your question, she's not reading the buildup. She just finds
Right.
herself here all of a sudden. But there
She finds
definitely
herself
were,
on the ground.
yeah, there were, 8 little things that he said, hey, before we got
Right.
to that. Unless it's like the
Right.
dog from out of nowhere that runs underneath him, and it really is just a, all of a sudden the thing goes off. So that would be the first thing, is to try to have her a little more aware of the horse and trying to see a little more of the lead up to what got us to this point. A lot of horses are kind of trigger stacking, that
Mhm.
they have like this little emotional bank account, and we have these few things that come out through the day, and each one of those pulls a little money out of that account, and then at some point they're overdrawn and they have nothing left, and
Yeah.
now we have the overreaction. So if we can
Yeah.
start to notice those smaller withdrawals coming, or we can gauge, I know this horse has a pretty small bank account, I don't have 8 of those, I have
Yeah.
3, and then boom,
Yeah.
right? So some of those horses really benefit from stronger leadership. They're the ones you want to grab a hold of and say, no, not now. And then they'll kind of defer to you and bottle it up. They can hold it together a little bit more. That would generally be my first tactic. So I would want to read the horse, try to be mindful of where I am, not get him in too much trouble, try to figure out the whole point is, if you can stop short of that line, you stretch him but not too far, then you're like growing the bank account at that point. Now we have more to pull out tomorrow and the day and the next year and so forth. You're talking about a horse that's someone standing up in and cracking a bullwhip on. So one of my strong suspicions, just from what you've told me, I haven't seen the animal, but I think I wrote about this in an article not too long ago too, but the very first thing that young cocky trainers learn to do that they wind up getting impressed with is desensitizing. And they will figure out, I can do something that looks really impressive, like stand up in the saddle and crack a bullwhip. On probably 90% of the colts that I start, if I decided to take 45 minutes out of my day, I could do that on ride 1 or 2 or 3 too. That does not mean any one of y'all could go climb on that horse and not get thrown, right? So it just means that I got them to tolerate this specific thing with me. So the pitfall here is that if you don't read a horse really well, what you can train them to do is freeze. And it looks like what they're doing is tolerating this thing, and they're actually in freeze, which is right next to fight or flight. And just because they're not moving, you think they're tolerating it and they're good. And so it could be that this horse isn't really as solid as he appears to be. He has been trained to stick in freeze, which again is right next door to fight or flight, and then
I think that's very correct. But again, I mean, like he does have what I would call buttons. Like he can side pass and sliding stop and all the stuff, but he's worried about things. And like I can't even do the flag thing with him because like he's worried about it and he'll stand there and take it. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I don't know how to hardly grow his bank account because he will stand there and take it, and it's almost like you can't do little enough to get him to think about it, where he'll just go straight into, well, I guess I'll stand here and not move then because that seems safe, or he'll disengage his hindquarters for 10 years.
So like someone, I think it was Christy, brought up earlier about natural horsemanship and some of the stuff that it's become. Like that's an example of that to me. That is someone who thought they were doing this and actually was doing this other thing. And so like a couple of things I would probably try. One would be backing way up on some of these deals that he's doing. I would try some different props. So if he's done a flag and a rope and all of that, maybe you try a pool noodle. Or
he's now terrified of the rope. I've seen videos of them roping off of him, and I've done some different stuff with the rope, and he is terrified of it. Will hurt you over it.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot, and I keep telling her, I'm like, I'm not sure this is the horse for you, but she likes him, so I'm trying to help her.
Well, I mean, like that could be that the stuff that was done on him was more like flooding and he was kind of crammed into a box. And if you're not a
Yeah.
rider strong enough to keep that box together, then it kind of comes apart on you. And a lot of times, just to be honest with you, those horses tend to get worse before they get better. So when you
Okay.
go to unpack that box and they actually free up those emotions they've been bottling up,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily a month I want the owner there to watch, because
Okay.
they may never climb back on that horse again after they see some of the things that happens when they come out of freeze and they start releasing all that tension and all of those things. Sometimes it gets significantly worse before it gets better. So like I did 2 articles, one on learned helplessness and one on flooding. And so
Mm-hmm.
you might go back. I know the flooding one I emailed, but the learned helplessness one's on Facebook, and you probably would have got the email
I
anyway.
should have, yeah. I'll go
Um,
back and look for it. It may have gone to junk. I don't think I saw that one.
that I know we talked about it in your last lesson too, about
Mhm.
like I'd rather show a horse 50 things twice than 2 things 50 times. So this
Mhm.
is definitely that situation. I want to get as creative as I can and not use something he's already seen before. So I kind of have
Okay.
as close to a fresh slate and not a anticipatory he's going to lock up and freeze, or because you can't teach him if he freezes. Like
Right, and
you're
that's
stuck at
I
that
run
point until you
into
get him out of it. So
yeah, I run into freeze and panic, and that's his 2 states.
well, panic is actually the improvement. So panic's
Okay.
what he's going to do when he comes out of freeze.
Okay.
And then that's the horse you're looking for, lick and chew, big deep breaths, lets down. You
Okay.
probably are going to have to antagonize him with something and then back away 20 feet for him to be able to let down.
Okay.
And he needs to do that 80,000 times until
Okay.
you've got him back where he's actually managing his emotions and not just freezing. Because that's
Okay.
a significant problem. Free on that kind of sliding scale, freeze is a good ways into the sympathetic nervous system. It's right before fight or flight. So if you train
Yeah.
a horse to go there, you are right next to danger. So and that's kind of, the more you talk about him, the more that's what it sounds like is going on. These are the horses I get wacky with. So
Okay.
like I might do the flag thing and he freezes and I'm going to do 3 jumping jacks in front of him and he's going to look at me like, what in the hell is this person?
I've done
That's
a lot of jumping jacks just walking up to him because he's
Yeah.
weird about you walking up to him, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll just jump around then.
Yeah, he needs as much stuff that makes him go, what the hell is this? That's
Okay.
the exact, because that's a stimulation of thought. Now
So
he's
just
not.
anything to get him to think.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is
Okay.
your solution. This is not going to be solved in a week. This is,
I've been
you know.
working with him for a year, and it's better-ish most days.
This I kind of hesitate to say this. I don't know how comfortable you would be with this or something, but like these are the horses that you lay down. That tends to help
Yeah.
them a bunch, but that can be dangerous. I don't know if you're have done that or if you're going to do that for the first few times, I wouldn't suggest you do that with one that might actually be dangerous. So
Yeah, I've done it on some pretty compliant individuals, but there's not a good spot there to really do it. And I think he'd be the type to really panic first and think later. So
yeah,
I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing it with him.
that would be the kind of horse that I would do that with, though.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
Okay.
You could also try some other stuff like maybe leading him by the feet. That can help them
Okay.
a lot too. But that's a good thing to do in a round pen or something, or if you're comfortable enough holding 2 ropes, one to the halter and then one to the feet, that can.
Yeah.
Some people, that's way too much going on in their hands for them to deal with. But that kind of sounds like what you have going on there.
Okay. That's helpful.
Where are the articles? Yes. So I'll email out that again tonight. The flooding and the learned helplessness articles. I'll look for those as soon as we get off this call. I'll send those out to the whole email list. So if you hadn't gotten it, y'all will get it. I'm kind of just getting into the email list thing. I've had some problems on my website since I've rebuilt it, and I've only in the last couple of weeks ironed out the mechanism that allows me to email y'all now. So, so that may not have gone out successfully like I thought it did.
For me, I think I just signed up for them, so I probably missed that.
Okay.
And honestly, now she's just opened up a whole nother can of worms, because I'm very curious about the laying down. What about laying down the horse helps?
That's a big discussion, and honestly,
Oh.
your horse might not be one I would do that with, but somebody else was saying something. Go ahead, Christy.
I'm just curious because I'm hearing what to me, I'd start that horse over. We'd be right back to, you're a baby and you know nothing, and start all over. The poor thing.
Yeah, I've done a lot of restarting stuff with him, and I keep running into these freeze patterns. So I'm just, like I said, I've been working with him for a year. It's not like I've thrown most of what I know at him. Everything from like just, basically sitting in a chair reading a book and getting him to just watch me, to, all right, well, let's get real aggressive and see what we've got here.
Right.
And then everything in between. So, I mean, it's even to the point where it's like we'll be real solid for, 3 weeks, and then it seemingly I'm missing something, but seemingly out of nowhere he just explodes again, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure what went wrong there, but here we go. So
I don't know if Daniel agrees with that, but isn't there memory in that kind of behavior? Just like negative memory?
Yeah, there could be. I mean, that can be PTSD type things, if that's what you're talking about. I wouldn't call it a memory, but there can be an association that evokes a trigger, and boom. And some of those horses, like one thing I'm going to say is we've lost our management of culling horses in the last 20 years. And they're just like we all know someone that's batshit crazy, and they're just not right. And it stands to reason that you're going to have a certain percentage of animals that are that way too. And sometimes if that's a mare, well, I can't ride her, so I'll breed her, and we'll produce 8 colts that are also batshit crazy, just like her. And I've seen horses, it was almost like they were schizophrenic. Like they were responding to something going on in this world I couldn't perceive. It was like there were ghosts, or I don't know what they were triggering off of, but I've seen horses like that. There's not a lot of them. I've dealt with maybe a dozen in my career out of several thousand. So I'm not saying like all of them, this is common, but I've seen some horses where there was just no rhyme or reason to what they were
I think there's mental illness in horses. In fact, I think I read something about that a few years ago. It's a valid point.
Mm-hmm.
I've been around some of more of those types. I don't think he's one of those. I think he's got quote unquote reasons. It's just not something I noticed before it happened,
Yeah, so more from what you're describing, it sounds more and more like he was trained to freeze kind of thing. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would, if you're asking me to unpack about laying him down, I would want to first build a rapport with him, which means I do some pushing and some backing off. I want to get to a point while I'm playing with him that I'm pretty sure I can trigger a lick and chew or a yawn or something like that at will. And so I can rev him up and I can get him to come back down. And I feel like I have kind of consistent control where that's at least a predictable thing. Some horses that could be 20 minutes, some horses that be a week. It just depends. When I feel like I've got that going on, that's when I would attempt to lay them down. So I'll just say this: laying down is one of those techniques I don't use a ton anymore. I laid everything down that I rode for probably 20 plus years. So I've laid down 800 to 1,000 horses. I have kind of now figure again in that time value thing, like there's certain types of horses, certain situations where I could lay them down, but I don't get as much value. I could do better things with that 30 minutes than laying that horse down. There are other horses like what you're describing where that's maybe the best 30-minute use of 30 minutes to an hour that I could possibly have. So for the ones that it works on, they tend to be either the really scared, really withdrawn bronchi types, which is kind of what you're describing there, or the really spoiled, really pushy, need to be taken down a notch type horses. So kind of both extremes. The horses that are in the middle, there's not a whole lot of value in doing it with them. So I don't know if I would be responsible or irresponsible to explain to you exactly how I would do that. I actually do have a YouTube video. I think it's called Laying One Down with Feel, that shows like the last few minutes of me laying a horse down, which is exactly the kind of horse you're describing.
Okay.
And there's a couple of things there. So I want them to go down easy, which doesn't necessarily mean the first time they go down was a good down. So if they go down and try to get right back up, I let them, and then I start over and I lay them. So some horses may get laid down 5 times before they're actually down. All right. I kind of want them to fight. They're going to fight the rope. They're going to fight themselves. I try to stay out of the way and just let them do that. And I'm just guiding them to the ground. So it isn't I have an advantage because I'm a big, strong guy. I'm not, it's like a bridle rein. I'm just guiding them here, and they either are resisting that or finally yielding to it. And I'm just waiting until the resistance melts away and they yield to it. When they go down, I immediately undo everything. So they got their feet back, their heads loose. I don't flag over the top of them. I just pet on them a little bit, and then I walk to the far end of the round pen. And if I was a smoker, I'd light a cigarette. I'm just hanging out over there. You would be. So like, here's a couple of oddities. Probably like 80% of the horses I've laid down, they go down in 5 or 10 minutes. It is not generally a prolonged process. I've had 2 that took over an hour. They were full brother and sister. And if someone brought me the next one in line, I would just shoot it in the head and save us all a whole lot of time. Okay. But no, I mean, I would honestly, I would not try to lay that bloodline down again. I've learned just not worth it. So, but most of them go down in a reasonably quick period of time. You would be shocked the number of them that stay down for like 20 minutes. And I let them, long as they're down, they're down. Usually that's the end of our day. I don't ride them after that or anything. I don't mess with them when they're down there. A ton of them will lay down for a while, get back up, kind of halfway up on their side, look around, see me, and then lay right back down and sleep another 10 minutes. That happens. Probably more than half of them do that. And it tends to be a really life-changing kind of a thing. Like they're never the same horse again for the ones that it works on. I don't personally like to do that a ton of times. I feel like it's a law of diminishing returns. So with like maybe 10% of them, I'll do it again the next day if I didn't feel like we had got all we needed to out of the first experience. With most of them, I might do that again 3 weeks, 6 weeks later or something, but I don't do it, 5 days in a row or anything like that. If that's what's going on, then you didn't really get much out of it. It's not working. You need to try something else. So I will say that the argument could be made that what is happening in that process is learned helplessness. I would say it's not quite learned helplessness, but it's on that road. But I'm doing it in a good way. I'm putting that horse in the worst position I could possibly put them in. They are going to fight. They are going to freak out. Their eyes are going to do this, and then they're going to succumb and lay down. But the important part is that nothing happens. They were as submissive and vulnerable as could be, and they didn't get hurt. They got supported. Everything was okay. And to me, the light switch that flips is that they realize, and this is anthropomorphizing it, but it's like they realize, oh, I've been a fool. It's really not, as all these fears I've had are not justified. This was the worst thing I could imagine, and nothing happened. I put myself in this whole mess. Now, do I think horses have complex thoughts like that? No. That's just my human rationalization and organization of what it appears to be like. But it's something like that. So I do feel a pretty big responsibility if I know I'm pushing a horse pretty darn hard in that process. And so I'm obligated to make sure that goes as smoothly as possible. They don't get hurt, and I've never had one that's gotten permanently hurt. I'll say the worst I've had there, I have a horse trainer friend who showed me a different way to do it. And it was really another one of these situations. He would tie the left leg up, but he would then pass the rope around to the other side of the horse. So he's picking the left hoof up, but drawing it to the right and tying it there. And so what I found is if I do that and the horse goes to fighting the rope and pawing, what he's doing is beating his right leg to smithereens. He's pawing himself in the knee. And I tried this with one horse, and that horse was lame for about a week on the right front. And I said, nope, not doing that again. So that's the worst scenario I've ever had. And the horse wasn't permanently hurt. He was just sore for a few days from pawing himself in the other leg 50 times. I have had a few flip over doing it. So again, this is not something I would just advise anybody to go out there and try. But since y'all asked, I'm trying to candidly answer. So, anything else, or have I sufficiently scared everybody with that?
I've got one more just big general question.
Okay.
You were talking about horsemanship kind of programs earlier being basically a trainer's opinion. Which made me kind of wonder, are there hard and fast rules or truths to you in horsemanship, which I understand is still an opinion, but what do you look for in those programs to be like, this guy's blowing smoke, where, or, oh, okay, you've got some truth in this. This will probably work out for your horses.
Yeah. A couple of things. I mean, one, I look for, I don't want to see a whole lot of ego. If what they're presenting is validating how great they are, then there's a whole lot of smoke in that. If what they're presenting is, this has worked for you most of the times, and here are 3 funny stories about when it went horribly wrong, now I believe the person I'm talking to, that's they're candid, because nothing's 100%,
Yeah.
And just as I wanted to be frank, there's none of us that fix every horse. If we tend to, at the expos and stuff, we get together, we're telling war stories about the horses that almost killed us. We're not talking about the one we won such and such amount of money on or whatever. That's nobody cares about that. They want to hear about the one that gave you a scar on your arm or whatever. So that's a big thing. I'm looking for how candid they are and honest about this, because it's not tab A in the slot B. You have to be flexible. You got to recognize when this is not working with this horse and I need to change game plan. So do they have 3 game plans, or is it just this? If it's just this, then maybe they're a little too young to be teaching the world. They need to kind of just train horses for a while and learn some different strategies where they have 10 answers for one question instead of 1 answer for 10 questions, kind of a deal. I would also want to see, I want to hear, honestly, it depends coming from someone a lot, because it does. If again, it's kind of like what I just said, if they can't give you 3 scenarios, and if it's like this, I would try this, but if it's like that, then you're in this other camp, and you probably need to, if I'm not getting that kind of stuff from them, that I'm getting an incomplete answer, whether it's they don't want to take the time to answer it or don't have the time, or whether, again, they have 1 answer for 10 questions instead of 10 answers for 1. And I want to hear kind of the thoughts fleshed out, that there is a thought process behind why I'm saying this. This is not just, I always hate the take my word for it. It's why I talk so damn much, and why everything I write is 10 times longer than it needed to be, because I feel like I need to flesh that out with here's why behind it. This is not just me saying, yeah, if you light 3 candles and burn some sage in the arena, then he won't buck tomorrow. You're good to go. It's not, magic or anything. There's hard and fast stuff behind this as to why it works this way. So that would be it. And, honestly, there's a ton of good horse people out there right now. There really are. There are some charlatans and shysters out there too. I wish I had more to tell you. I mean, I'm big on I want you to do your own critical thinking and make your own decisions. I don't really want to tell you exactly what to do. I just want to give you the ability to have the answers and figure out your own thing. So I try not to directly address any other clinicians unless they're good friends, and I don't mind backing them up. Does that sufficiently answer that question, or you feel like I'm skirting around?
I mean, I can't believe you would skirt around like that. That's pretty good.
There are definitely some clinicians that I just I wonder, how is anybody following this person? But I mean, that's, it is just my opinion. At the end of the day, maybe there's some validity to it after all. So
yeah.
Christy says, this is better than I thought it might be. It is my life goal to set the bar low, Christy. That is what I shoot for most of the time. So you're figuring me out. I don't like that. I'm going to have to be more shysty in the next one here. Is there anything else? Terry has to go do chores. All right. Well, enjoy your chores, Terry. I did want to ask y'all a podcast question or two, if I can pick y'all's brains a little bit. I have a pretty good list of podcast guests. And in fact, I have a bunch of big name people that were so busy during the year, they kept pushing me to December. And now I've got a whole bunch of people to interview and do podcasts in December. But I'm always looking for other potential people. So if y'all have someone you think you'd like to hear me have a chat with or something like that, you don't have to say it out loud right now. If you feel good about it, put it in the chat or whatever. I'll reach out to them. There are people that tell me no. So I have had, folks that were suggested. Rich suggested one, and I reached out and she wasn't interested. So if you don't hear your guest come on, don't assume that I didn't reach out to him. Better questions. Kevin Costner. All right. So since y'all all showed up for the live one, I'm about to have a Yellowstone actor on the podcast. We're going to be doing that probably in the next week or 10 days or something. It will not be Kevin Costner. It won't even be one of the really big people, but anything else? We're kind of coming up on the end of this too, but I'm happy to answer another question or two if y'all have got one. All right. Well, thank y'all for showing up. I'm glad it wasn't me and one other person, something like that. So y'all have validated my ego for the night. Thank y'all very, very much. And I'll record this and put this on the website. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to hold up on the learned helplessness and flooding, and I will put that and a link to this tomorrow and send that out as an email. So if y'all want to rewatch anything or whatever, it'll be up. But thank y'all for coming on. If you got some horse friends, we're going to do more of these. So tell them it was worth your time. And Daniel sets the bar low. So even Christy was happy about what all we talked about. And it was worth your time. So thank y'all much, and we'll see you another one. Take care.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dolphin.